So welcome back to viewers on YouTube. We kind of missed you last week, didn't we?
We did. We're very sorry.
Sorry about that. We could go into lots of technical reasons, but it's just we won't bother. So you could still catch up with us in audible form last week, but you had the actually distinct advantage of not being able to see us.
Yeah, exactly. You just had to listen to us.
Probably quite a good thing.
Yeah.
So basically, Lizzie's going to lead the discussion this week because I've actually been on a few days off and haven't followed anything that's going on. So Lizzie's basically in charge this week, and I'm just going to pipe up like every other minute or so. So over to you.
Me.
See you in 30 minutes.
My goodness.
Yep.
I'll start with the rundown, shall I?
Yep.
Fine, okay.
I might learn a few things in this rundown.
You might, but you know about the first thing I'm going to mention because we have covered this today.
Okay, yeah, I know about this one.
So the first thing on my list is the Queen has carried out her first public engagement outside of a royal residence since lockdown started in March, and she was joined by her grandson, Prince William, for a visit to Portondown in Salisbury. Prince William concluded his very important week on the environment last week with a TED Talk, his first TED Talk on the environment.
I definitely saw that.
Harry and Meghan have had a very busy weekend. They joined the Teenager Therapy podcast. They had a conversation with Malala, and Meghan spoke to Fortune magazine. So 3 different videos from them this week.
Okay.
The Duchess of Cambridge announced the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and she also had a very important visit to a Tommy's Research Centre to mark Baby Loss Awareness Week in the UK. And the Duchess of Cornwall visited Ebony Horse Club and their neighbours, a boxing club.
So I'm aware of probably 50% of those, which isn't bad, really, is it? So
I mean, it's not brilliant.
Normally,
but okay.
normally I decide the order and I like change. So I'm basically going to hand that over to you. What do you want to talk about first? We've got Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, the Sussexes. There's a bit of politics you didn't mention, which I tweeted about last Friday, which was the congressman who was complaining about Harry and Meghan interfering in the election. So we could talk about that. Should we start at the top of the tree?
Let's start at the top of the tree.
Okay.
And then we can go to another bit of the tree with an actual tree. Prince William was sitting in a tree. That wasn't a very good segue.
I'm normally the king of
that wasn't a
segues.
Brilliant segue.
Okay, top of the tree, Queen,
yes.
And then William. Yes, he did his TED Talk sat
William
in a tree.
In a tree.
Literally
yes,
in a tree, yes.
Okay.
Let's go with the Queen. Haven't seen her for 7 months. Now, we've been trying to work out in the edit suite today whether these 7 months is the longest ever period in the Queen's 68-year reign that she hasn't met her subjects. The answer to that is, we think, yes,
it's
probably.
definitely up there. It's up there. So she has, she's done a couple of what we would describe as public engagements during lockdown, but both of those have been within palaces. So she knighted Captain Tom.
Oh, love that.
And she also had a sort of mini trooping the colour for her official birthday. But this was her first public engagement outside of a royal residence. Yes,
to recap, so the last time we saw the Queen was on the 9th of March when they were at the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, which incidentally was the last time Harry and Meghan did an official royal engagement at all, ever. And then for the next 7 months, the Queen's kind of been in this, what do they call it, HMS bubble. So she went, basically stayed at Windsor Castle for most of it. We've told you this many times. I'm sure you know it if you're an avid follower of this podcast. Mm-hmm. Then she went up to Balmoral for the summer. She had a brief stay at Wood Farm in Sandringham with Prince Philip. She's left him there. She's now back in Windsor. So this is the first time she's been outside one of her residences to do a royal engagement.
Yeah, although, it's funny actually because they have done a remarkable job at staying incredibly visible, even on digital platforms or the kind of couple of engagement that she's done. I feel like it is a really long time since we last saw her, but
when
it
you
doesn't
think
feel like it.
The Queen has famously said one needs to be seen to be believed. They've kind of achieved that through those national addresses and all the rest of it. But obviously she's done it via Zoom, or she's done national broadcasts, or she's been in the quadrangle at Windsor Castle. But she was out and about. Now, okay, we had a discussion about this today, didn't we? And there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter. Where do you go when you want to do your first visit for 7 months? I mean, you've got lots of choices, hospitals, schools. She went to a chemical weapons research facility.
She did, but a lot of the work that they've been doing in recent months has been around the response to COVID. So
I only laugh because there's been quite a few things on my Twitter timeline that say my grandma never took me to a chemical weapons research establishment. Anyway, so she took William. That's the point we're talking about grandma. So grandma and grandson were there. Porton Down is part of this, what's it, DSTL, Defence Science and Technologies Laboratory or something,
That's
isn't it?
it,
So
yeah.
actually they were the people that investigated Novichok when you remember the Russians were accused of, they've denied, but the Russians were accused of poisoning Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in Salisbury using Novichok. Actually, and sadly, one member of the public died when they picked up the perfume bottle that it was disguised in. Anyhow, it's Porton Down that does all that kind of work. They look into all that stuff. They also look into the stuff that's been used in Syria. Quite an important place in many ways, counter-terrorism and all the rest of it. So the Queen was there to thank the staff, and they've also been working on COVID, the staff at Porton Down as well, haven't they?
they have, and we heard you could pick up a couple of the conversations that the Queen was having with those staff when she was thanking them for the work that they've been doing and hearing about how they've been tackling it. And she described it as that horrible new thing, didn't she?
Yes, the horrible new
I think we can all agree with her there.
I suddenly thought that was a bit odd, but then actually, isn't that what this thing is? This pandemic, this virus is that horrible new thing. We heard her say a couple of things, like it was doubling in...
Its rate.
Its rate was doubling in the UK at the moment because we, like many other countries, are going into a second wave. She also spoke about what they did there and how every day must be quite sort of different and interesting.
And you never quite know what's going to come next, which I think with COVID, this just came out of nowhere.
Yes.
I mean, you really weren't expecting this.
So as a special treat for you, we've put all the Queen's best bits together. None of them in themselves are very long, so we're just going to put them all together and you can hear some of the things that we heard the Queen say on this visit that she did.
And no one knows what's going to come next. It's an interesting place to be, actually, isn't it?
Most definitely, especially at the
Things
moment.
happen.
Yes, most definitely.
It's quite a difficult thing to plan too, isn't it?
It is, because you don't quite know
No.
which way it's going to go.
And now it's doubling itself again, isn't it?
It is unfortunately on the rise.
Ooh, right.
Thank you very much for that.
Well, it's proof that we've been here.
It's proof that you have been here, and we will treasure that for many years and show folks, I'm sure, as well.
So it proves we've been here, the Queen said after she signed the visitor's book, as if anyone were to doubt that she was actually there.
I love that.
Her
It's
name.
always she's always very witty, isn't she, the Queen?
There's always a little bit. Now, a lot of the debate on social media and elsewhere today has been about whether or not the Queen should have worn a face mask because she was inside. Lots of social distancing going on. If you're watching on YouTube, you might be able to see some of these pictures. They look very socially distant. They were socially distant throughout. But, question mark, should she have worn a face mask?
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions about this, and we have seen members of the royal family out on engagements where they are wearing face masks.
So
but
there was Kate at, well, I mean, we'll come to it later, but Kate at Tommy's yesterday had a mask on.
Yeah.
Camilla was out the Ebony Horse thing on
she
Tuesday,
wore one for
mask
the
on.
boxing.
When we were with Camilla doing the COVID dogs a few weeks ago, she had a visor on.
Yeah, and lots of these engagements have been inside. And what we were told is that the advice from the medical household was that it was safe.
When you say the medical household, it's the Queen's doctors.
The Queen's
yeah.
doctors.
It's the posh word for the Queen's doctors.
Yeah, that that it had been checked, she didn't need one,
Yep.
and all the staff that she met when they were at Porton Down had been tested, and those tests had come back negative.
Yes.
So nobody had COVID.
Yeah, and they wouldn't actually tell us if Prince William had had a test either. They did kind of say he met his granny in Balmoral over the summer, but they didn't actually say whether or not he'd been tested before meeting the Queen today. But it just so happens I have the quote from Buckingham Palace here, which was specific advice has been sought from the medical household, brackets, the Queen's doctors, close brackets, and relevant parties, and all necessary precautions taken working closely with DSTL, which is the Porton Down people. So,
Yeah, and they were in a large marquee. All the sides were up on that marquee, so good draft through. And as I said, all the staff that she was meeting had been tested, and
actually,
they were negative.
When
so.
we looked at it, there were some events like when we were in Northern Ireland. Was it last week? God, no, the week before. When Prince Charles went into a food processing factory, he didn't have a mask on. So I think it depends on Because actually, the rules in the UK, or at least the rules in England, are that you have to wear a mask if you're in a shop or on public transport. Not that the Queen goes on buses very often, I'm sure, but but if the Queen were to get on a bus, although in London
Or the tube.
now, I don't joke, but in London at the moment we've been told not to use public transport anymore as London's been ramped up the COVID tiers. Anyway, I digress. If the Queen were to get on a bus, she'd have to wear a mask. What they were saying was her medics had looked at this, looked at the size of it, the airflow and blah, 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 and decided it wasn't necessary. So
Yeah, and there is no way they're going to put the Queen in any danger.
Well,
I mean, they are going to have taken every precaution necessary, and it will have been carried out as safely as possible. I can't think that for a single second they'd have let her go there today
Quite
if they'd
so.
been in any way dangerous.
And at age 94, of course, the Queen's in one of the most vulnerable age categories. So,
Although, I mean, she just
despite being the
looks
head of state, she's also pretty
remarkable
old.
for 94, doesn't she?
Yes.
I mean, just incredible.
Looked like she was on good form. So the rest of this podcast will have to be over to you. Actually, to be fair, I jest a little bit. I did watch the podcast that Harry and Meghan did for World Mental Health Day with a who's she talking to? Some teenagers, wasn't it, from California?
She was, yes. The Teenager Therapy. They're a group of California high school students that run this podcast, and Harry and Meghan had heard their work and were very impressed by them, we're told.
I like the way at the beginning they were talking about, actually have a little listen about how, am I nervous, are you nervous? They were slightly nervous about meeting them. There was actually quite a nice little exchange, quite a human exchange, I thought, at the very beginning of this podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Teenager Therapy. I'm Gael.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Thomas.
And today we're here with a special guest, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. How are you guys?
Hi. I'm Megan.
Hi, I'm Harry.
Really happy to be with you guys today. We're doing well. How are you doing?
We're doing good. It's a beautiful day.
Very excited.
A little bit nervous.
Oh, I'm definitely.
You do not need to be nervous. Why do you feel nervous?
I think we're all nervous, aren't we?
Probably, yeah.
You feel nervous? Yeah, I mean, it's just, I'll get through it. So it's
Breathe.
fine. Yeah.
But the words that got really picked up on the podcast was what Meghan said about social media, about being, how does she put it, the most trolled person in the entire world.
Yeah, she said that in 2019 she was the most trolled person in the entire world, male or female.
Right.
And that for 8 months of that she wasn't even visible because she was on maternity leave or with a baby.
Right. Should we listen to Meghan say it? As much as... I reckon we should listen to Meghan say these actual words because... and then you can decide for yourself, whether you agree with her and whether, as she put it, it's almost unsurvivable.
I'm told that in 2019, I was the most trolled person in the entire world, male or female. Now, 8 months of that, I wasn't even visible. I was on maternity leave or with a baby. But what was able to just be manufactured and churned out, it's almost unsurvivable. That's so big, you can't even think of what that feels like, because I don't care if you're 15 or you're 25, if people are saying things about you that aren't true, what that does to your mental and emotional health is so damaging.
So unsurvivable. I mean, it was a pretty whirlwind year when there was a lot of stuff on social media about Harry and Meghan, which led obviously to her the tour in Africa and the interview that she did with our colleague Tom, wasn't it?
Yeah, that famous interview where she talked about it's not enough to survive, that you have to thrive, and then Tom asked her how she was, and she said, well, thank you for asking me if I'm okay. And she addressed that in the podcast, and about how when she made those comments to Tom, how she was absolutely exhausted at the time. She was juggling the tour and juggling having baby Archie and sort of trying to do both really well, and sort of explaining where those comments had come from when she said them.
Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting as well. Meditation. Now, out of Harry and Meghan, if I asked you, 3 years ago, who do you think meditates the most?
I would have definitely said Meghan 3 years
well,
ago.
Apparently not, according to Harry.
No.
Have a listen to what Harry said. I mean, he was talking about actually making a choice not to read a lot of this stuff, because he said if you consume social media and comments and all this, stuff that's written about them, it's just exhausting, and he makes a choice not to see it. But this is how Harry says that he survives it. This is how he gets through it.
For me, I make the choice not to read it, not to see it, and to remove myself from that, and to very much focus on the uplifting and the hopeful side, which most of it I get from your generation as well, which is even greater. But for me, meditation is key. I never thought I'd be the person to do that. Of course, the importance of just taking a moment and creating that time in your day to be able to take a breath and actually just focus on the things that really matter.
He's very dedicated to it too. He's
the
very
benefits
good
of that are huge, and I think that builds up a certain amount of resilience.
I like the fact that Meghan said at the end there, he's very dedicated to it.
Yeah, no, I think he takes it incredibly seriously.
Yeah, there we are. They also did a chat with Malala Yousafzai, didn't they?
They did, yeah. That was one of their conversations at the weekend, and that was to mark Day of the Girl.
Yes.
So, what I had realized very early on was that when women have a seat at the table, conversations in terms of policy change, conversations in terms of legislation, certainly in terms of just the dynamics of a community, are all shifted. And typically when a woman is present at the table, she's going to be advocating for an entire family as opposed to a patriarchal presence.
Every single person, every single child, every single young person across the world needs an education. And to know that there's over 130 million girls out of education right now, before the pandemic, and I think during as well, and the numbers are only going to go up. It worries me and probably worries all of us, the effect that is going to have, not just on the individual, but on the family, on the community, on the country, and on the world at large.
And we know how much female education means to Meghan, but also to Harry as well. When we were in Morocco with them, remember we went to up into the Atlas Mountains to see that CAMFED, the Campaign for Female Education, the school that they run there.
Yeah, we know that this is one of the issues that Meghan really wants to use her voice to promote and to do as much work on as possible. But interestingly, during that chat, Prince Harry spoke a little bit about his own education. He obviously had an incredibly privileged education. He went to Eton, and he said during that podcast that he now sees his schooling as amazing, but he certainly probably wasn't grateful for it at the time.
Right. Well, he would had he gone to a sort of local comprehensive, he might have realised quite how good Eton was.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that
it's what you get
possibly
used to,
is,
isn't it?
Yeah, and he's looking back now and realising, just how lucky he was.
Yeah, how fortunate that was.
Yeah.
What did you make of the comments from the Congressman Jason Smith, who basically wrote to the British ambassador? Let's have a look at his tweet here. This is from Congressman Jason Smith. Rep Jason Smith is what he is on Twitter, and he put out on his Twitter feed a letter that he sent to the British ambassador in Washington to demand that Harry and Meghan stop interfering in the US election, and called it an inappropriate act of domestic interference by one of our closest allies. Pretty strong stuff.
And
but let's be clear, Meghan and Harry never said vote Trump or vote Biden. They just said avoid negativity, avoid hate, and vote.
And some of their comments have been widely interpreted as supporting Biden over Trump.
Because we know what Meghan thinks about Donald Trump.
And Meghan saying, this election is more important than any other in terms of having change. So
she's an American citizen, more than she is a royal.
Yeah, read into what they've said, but they never explicitly said that. It feels like that tweet, while it sounds very punchy, didn't make much noise or cause much.
Or it sounds like a congressman who just wants to raise his profile. So I certainly haven't, but then I don't cover American politics very often. I haven't heard of Jason Smith before that, but it was quite interesting, and he put the letter out there. And what was another comment he put on? Yes, these actions represent a serious breach of the British royal family's policy of political neutrality. But then Harry and Meghan can quite well argue they're not in the British royal family anymore. They're certainly not working royals.
Talking of which, during Meghan appeared during Fortune magazine's Most Powerful Women Next Gen Summit. Quite a long title.
Yep.
And during that,
were you not at that?
The virtual summit, yes, I've watched it.
Has this podcast not put you in the next gen powerful women in the world?
And next gen, probably that's where the issue is. I'm not next, yes. And Meghan said, sometimes making decisions for yourself and your family might not be the most popular ones.
Yeah.
So I think you could read into that she was potentially talking about, their departure from working members of the royal family. And she said, but when you really know who you are and you know what your belief system is and you live by the truth, then I think you can start to peel away the layers of where the fear comes in.
Shall we talk about Kate or William next? You can choose.
William.
William, TED Talk, Tree.
TED Talk, Tree. Yes. Windsor, yes.
Okay.
Let me find
So
my-
this was, blimey, this is end of last week. No, it happened on Saturday, so post the recording of our podcast.
Post the recording of our podcast, we've been talking about the Earthshot Prize.
Yeah, the Earthshot Prize, and previous to that, the ITV documentary.
Yeah, and his important work around climate change and the environment and how this is going to be kind of going forward.
His big thing.
His big thing, and dominate a lot of the work that he does. And he finished off the week with
a TED Talk.
A TED Talk, yes.
Should we listen to it?
Yes, let's listen to it. This is as part of Countdown, which is a global campaign to halve greenhouse gas emissions by 2030.
Hello everyone. Growing up in my family gives you a certain sense of history. I'm simply the latest in a line that can be traced back generations. This oak tree is close to Windsor Castle, which has been home to my family for over 900 years. 39 monarchs have lived here and enjoyed these beautiful surroundings. I've walked here many times myself, and it always amazes me that some of the trees planted here, living organisms dependent on soil, rain and sunlight, were here as they laid the first stones of Windsor Castle. That makes some of the oaks here almost 1,000 years old. These trees germinated during the reign of William the Conqueror in 1066 from a simple acorn like this. By the time that Henry VIII lived here, they'd grown into mature, impressive giants. And amazingly, some of those very same trees still survive here today. They're a bit gnarled and hollowed out, but they're still very much alive. While these oaks have been growing, around 35 billion people have lived their lives on our planet. That's 35 billion lifetimes worth of hope, love, fear, and dreams. In that time, humankind has invented air travel, vaccines, and computers. We've explored every part of the globe, sequenced the human genome, and even escaped Earth's atmosphere. Our speed of innovation has been incredible, but so too has the acceleration of our impact. Over my grandmother's lifetime, the last 90 years or so, our impact has accelerated so fast that our climate, oceans, air, nature, and all that depends on them are in peril. This oak has stood here for centuries, but never has it faced a decade like this.
So Kensington Palace is saying William's never done anything like this before, never sort of propped himself up in a tree. I mean, I'd like to see what the wider picture was. If you took the camera back.
They did. There is a shot.
Does it do it right at the end?
Where you can see.
Okay, and how was he sat in this tree?
He's sort of under the canopy of the tree, right. And he definitely. I haven't seen him address people like this before. It was a really engaging talk, and I really like how he used the tree. He talks about how, that has been there for hundreds of years, and
longer than his granny, the Queen.
Much longer than his granny, but he.
But he mentioned her though, didn't he?
He did during the talk. He talks about how over his grandmother's lifetime, the last sort of 90 years or so, she's 94, how much the impact the human population has impacted the climate and environment.
Massively. When was she born? 1926. Yeah, of course. So at a time with rapid industrial growth over that period, and also a massive explosion in the world population. So. And
I like how he used the kind of the oak and saying, it's been here for so long, yet it has never faced a decade like this.
I mean, it's a massive week for him, though, wasn't it? Last week, in terms of setting out his new. His new raison d'etre going forward kind of thing. So I think that was a really big week for William. And
a good platform for him to really be able to push the Earthshot Prize globally, which is what he really wants to do.
Yeah.
We all need to, it's not just the UK, this is a global effort to kind of have have change.
Well, actually, we saw the Queen and Prince William today doing the thing together at Porton Down, and we spoke last week, didn't we, about how the Queen is going to at some point support his Earthshot Prize and lend her significant welly.
Actually, when the operational note came through for Porton Down, I was like, here we go. Here's their environmental. Yeah. But no,
it's something else.
No.
But yeah, I don't think it'll be in the not too distant future, depending on COVID and all the other things that are significant and going on at the moment. So that's William's passion. I mean, Kate as well, who we know shares his passion because she spoke in Pakistan about climate change, etc. But her passion on the new mums and the younger generation, the charities that she is patron of. And I think Tommy's, it's a heartbreaking charity, isn't it? It's about people who have suffered serious loss.
Yeah, and she went to a Tommy's Research Centre at Imperial College London to hear about the work that they are doing to help reduce rates of miscarriage, premature births, really, and she met families who bravely spoke to her about their experiences. So it was a kind of a really important visit to mark Baby Loss Awareness Week in the UK.
Seriously was.
Yeah.
And actually, obviously, she was inside and closer together than the Queen. And this is one of the things we spoke about. Kate was wearing a mask throughout that, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
And a mask, I'm told that.
I have.
Yes,
and I had it first.
Do you think she saw you wear it?
I mean, I wouldn't like to speculate, but maybe.
Okay, well, maybe we should get a picture of the two of you together with your masks on and
socially distanced. We could arrange that.
Distant,
yes.
Yeah, we should. But no, I certainly support the work of Tommy's if you can, because it's a really, really important one. That. And the other thing she did this week was to announce the winner of that prize.
The wildlife photographer of the year, yes. And the photo, I love the photo. I think it's amazing. It was taken by a Russian photographer, Sergei Gorshkov, and he beat 49,000 entries to win. And his image is of a Siberian tigress hugging a fir tree in the forest.
Didn't it take him about 36 years to get this picture or something?
It took him 10 months to capture.
Okay.
So he scouted the forest to find the best spot, and he set up a camera trap to capture it, and it took him 10 months to get the shot.
Worth it,
Well, worth it.
Wildlife photographer of the year.
It does show the enormous dedication required to win that prize.
It's like when you watch those How We Made This Latest David Attenborough documentary, and when you watch those and you realise what the cameraman had to go to film the penguin who couldn't get up the slope, or to find a snow leopard high up in the Himalayas or whatever it is. I mean, it's like they do go to extremes to get these pictures.
Yeah, it was a beautiful photograph.
So congratulations to him. And on the wildlife theme, or not quite wild, but on the animal theme, Camilla was out supporting horses.
Was that one of your segues?
Well, okay, it was better than yours.
It was better than mine. Mine was terrible.
The animal theme. Continue the animal theme, would you?
I will. So Camilla went to see Ebony Horse Club, which does great work in helping young people in inner city London get out and ride, which is great.
And there's some nice pictures as well, I thought, from there. We know how much we know how much Camilla loves horses, don't we?
We know how much she loves horses,
yeah.
Yes. And I was actually quite jealous not to go and do a horse engagement, because they're my favourites. But
Indeed.
There we go.
Camilla and horses all together.
Yeah.
It makes for a happy royal producer.
It does. Dogs and horses, but
dogs and
alas.
Horses. Where did we last have
Not our
dog?
turns.
Wasn't it
the medical detection dogs was
medical
our last
detection
one.
dogs. And previous to that was the pub that Sophie Wessex went to, where you fell in love with a dog.
I did, yes.
Very good. Right, so we've had a bit of Queen, a bit of William, a bit of Kate, a bit of Harry, a bit of Meghan, a bit of Camilla. Not much Charles this week.
No.
I've seen some Prince's Trust stuff around. Like there's a big celebration coming up. They're taking over the radio to celebrate the Prince's Trust or something shortly.
Don't think
but
we've seen
more on that presumably next week.
We did have some news today on the cenotaph for Remembrance
Okay,
Sunday.
yes, very good point, actually. So Remembrance Sunday in the UK, if you're not living here, is the closest Sunday to November the 11th, the Armistice Day, and it's the day when traditionally the Queen and other members of the royal family and the Prime Minister and others all gather around the cenotaph on Whitehall in central London. This year, because of COVID, it's going to be a bit different.
It is, yeah. For the first time in history, this is going to be a closed event, so members of the public are being asked not to turn out and to commemorate from home, which is is unsurprising.
Yes.
Given
I can't remember when the Senate was
pandemic.
built, but it was built after the First World War. I seem to remember reading it was built in something like 1924, 1925 or something, and this is the first time in since then that the members of the public have been asked not to attend, and it will be a private event. So yes, the royal family will still be there. We haven't been told yet, but we're presuming that Prince Charles will lay the wreath on behalf of the nation. You will probably know that in the past couple of years he's led that service while the Queen's watched from a balcony because of her age, etc. So we're presuming that will happen, but it will be closed. And actually, veterans, we are told, will be there, but only a very few veterans, and also they'll be socially distant and all the rest of it. So
yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the most important events for the royal family. I think it is of no surprise that they will make every effort to make this happen as safely as possible.
Interestingly, Prince Andrew was there last year, wasn't he? This year, one suspects not, because I just don't think that can happen. But he was someone who served in the armed forces, wasn't he? Served in the Navy. So let's see what happens with that. But I doubt very much if he will be attending. Anyway, yeah, quite a busy week. I missed half of it, but I thought you did quite well.
Oh, thanks.
Well, yeah. You might as well close today, actually, because I always close. But as you've been in charge of this podcast, I'm just going to sit back and you can do the goodbyes.
Oh, I can do the goodbyes. Yeah. Well, we don't have anything, I'm afraid, to tee up ahead of next week. But as ever, I'm sure there'll be lots on the agenda. So we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.